Mary, great to see you down here in London. Thanks for taking the time to chat to us. I know we're going to talk about the Hackney Half and the fitness festivals that you're developing with Virgin Sport, but I just wanted to actually just take you a little bit back to how you first got into running.
Sure. I got into running because I was bad at every other sport. I grew up in a sports mad family and was not good at any of the traditional sports at the time for girls. Basketball in the U.S. and softball. And so I kept trying to find something I'd be good at. And ultimately, I was good at cheerleading. So ultimately, didn't like being on the sidelines, so found rowing. Actually, because a cheerleading friend was a rower, and I looked up to her. And I loved rowing. Because rowing, you just had to work hard. And, be lucky to have longer limbs. That helped, but it wasn't required. But what I loved about rowing was the teamwork, and I loved to train. So we ran, we lifted, we seat raced, and we were in the boat. And so within that group, I was an okay runner. And so I built over 5 years a great cardio base from rowing and had a lot of strength overall. So then on a dare, my senior in college, I ran a road race the morning after a party we were at, and I did well on it. So the cross-country coach happened to be there for the school and said, come run with us for 2 weeks. And he was very smart. He didn't let us run more than 45 minutes, which seemed like nothing compared to 3 hours of rowing training. And I said, well, this is kind of fun, and that's how I got started.
And obviously, you raced marathons competitively. I mean, did you find marathons, or did marathons find you? I mean, how did you move up to the distance?
I was never fast, so I could always just handle a pace for a long time. So I actually thought I'd end up being an ultra runner. I was lucky to run in law school. I went to a law school where at the time there was only a men's team, and I got to run with them, and that was an amazing experience. And so there I learned really all the basics of cross country and track that, as you know, once you learn it once, you have it for life. And it was just clear I had more distance capability than I did speed, so I was attracted to the distance. So pretty young, so I was 24 when I did my first marathon.
And you obviously went on to race quite a few marathons. You won the Marine Corps.
I did. So I've actually only done 7, counting last year's New York and 3 years before Boston. So in my prime, so to speak, I only did a couple. What I found is once I didn't have the rowing training, which gave me the overall strength, you get stripped down in running, right? You're not as overall. Today, runners do it all, but at the time we just ran. So I would end up getting hurt. So in the end, while I still believe I would have been more of a distance runner, I ended up getting more focused on my law career and thinking that running distance really wasn't, far distance fast wasn't the right formula for me.
So you obviously went into law, having done a law degree, and you went into the corporate world. I mean, how did you find that? You moved to New York?
I graduated from law school, which was Notre Dame, right near Chicago, and I said, I will never live in Chicago or New York City. I didn't want to live in a big city. I loved to run, and I was doing some cycling then, and so I thought you couldn't do that in the big city. So I actually spent about 8 years in Richmond, Virginia, and started commuting to New York to do deals, and ultimately realized, actually, there's a lot of running happening in New York City. And actually, if you live inside New York City, instead of trying to commute in and out of it every week, it's actually a pretty fabulous way to live. So I ended up moving to New York in 1994, and kept, obviously, was then lucky to really begin running as part of my job.
Yeah, so you left law, and I read somewhere that you left law because you wanted to start a family, and you went to work for the New York Roadrunners. And I'm kind of looking at that job wouldn't be particularly relaxing. It might be different stress from law, but it must have come with some serious pressures.
Well, it's very interesting. It was a really different time then. So this was 1998. So I had always wanted to work in sports. It had been so transformative for me as a child and a young woman. And I learned and grew so much through sport that I always wanted to share it with everybody else. So I planned to be a lawyer for 3 years. And what happened was I went from undergraduate to law and then was young and single as a lawyer. So I was still growing up. And so I was into what I was doing. And I wasn't so much thinking about, oh, wait, when am I going to go switch to sport? And then the years go on, and 10 years later, I had made partner, and all of a sudden I thought, wait a minute, this is not what I was supposed to be doing forever. And so I said, we were married, we hadn't had kids yet, and it was a time to make a big change away from all the security that the law firm represented and the like. And New York Roadrunners it was a pretty small organization then. And in fact, the marathon was in an interesting place. Fred LeBeau had died 4 years before. And at the time, the talk was all, it's London and Chicago are the new big marathons, and they weren't new at the time, but they were really growing fast. And New York was fading back a bit, so it wasn't actually. It felt, to be honest, it didn't. It felt. It didn't feel stressful at all. It felt like it had the kernel of some really great. Potential, and the chance to go in and bring it to life was massive. And I went in, it wasn't some big job. I mean, I was a CEO's number 2, but I was the director of administration. I mean, people thought, my friends like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? But for me, I mean, I never looked back. As soon as I stepped over, it's been amazing. But what I immediately saw, being a passionate runner, I immediately saw, wait a minute, this is a city of 8.5 million people. This is magic for so many people. So we started really broadening out beyond the just really hardcore to get other people moving. And what we did was it kept growing more and more events. So what happened is all of a sudden, all of these people who aren't even runners, you see what happens. People get pulled in and they become hardcore. So people always say, who are you for? And I'm like, we're for everyone, because guess what? It's a journey. And once you get into this, you are into it. And then you're hardcore too, and getting more people involved. So it never felt stressful. By the end, we were big, and you know what it takes to put on big events in cities today. But it's a privilege.
I mean, it must be the biggest event running organizing group in the world, is it?
Yeah, we got 160. I think they have 200 now. My former teammates are running the organization now and doing a great job. I now realize it is a really well-resourced organization. So there's lots of people covering a lot of jobs, and it's very exciting now beyond the events and the youth programs and the free running, which is on the model of the park run. There's a year-round running center, so really it's 365 days. So it's a special opportunity, and so much what I saw we were doing there is what made me say I have to seize this opportunity with Richard and Virgin, because I think in so many cities this opportunity is still there to take the big event that excites everybody and then say, okay, how do we service those people and connect them with other people to work out all year round? And for us, you're really deep into it, but so many people don't know. They don't know anything about the Backpackers Group or the London Brunch Club or the East End Runners, and from outside it all looks intimidating. So I really see a big opportunity to introduce a lot more people still to running.
Well, brings me on nicely, because you were very successful at New York Roadrunners. You were the first women international race director, I believe.
Probably just of the I think there's others, but the majors get a lot of attention.
Yeah, and obviously you worked on the World Marathon Majors. That was one of your
Dave
concepts.
and Bedford and I were early believers, and I really always saw a chance to bring the sport together more globally.
So I'm going to say you're very successful. Richard Branson, what was his pitch to you to actually let you to?
Well, I mean, it really is. It's a chance of a lifetime. When I met Richard, he said 2 things. He said, this will be your company. So it's so true. He has teams super dedicated teams running companies. And he said, yeah, can we get millions of people moving? Like, let's do it. And obviously, that's what it's all about for me. So, and it's been fun actually getting to know Richard more. And what's so interesting is all of my beliefs and our team's beliefs, and I think probably a lot of beliefs of the runners that you speak to all the time and the triathletes, is the magic is in taking on challenge, right? And the growth that comes from it, and stretching to do things that might be afraid to do. But what Richard adds, and what we have a chance to add, is the fun and just wrap it around. And so it's been really interesting to see him up close and how much he is game for anything, even if it seems impossible. I mean, he flew across the Atlantic in a hot air balloon. Like, we forget, right? But he's still doing things like that all the time. But he wraps it in fun. And if you think about it, I keep, I was building, we were creating this and thinking about it through the lens of what we can do as Virgin Sport, but it's really a way of life. And that's the way, I think he lived like that when he was 18, and it's the way he lives today. And it's that spirit that I think can really connect people to sport.
So then moving on, I mean, obviously you've amazing experience in the world of running.
Yeah.
Then you've put together Virgin Sport and you've created the fitness festivals. I know you can just talk us through a little bit about them.
Yeah, so I see the opportunity is, so again, we're not going to, I think for many decades, especially with women, we said, just come out. And I think that's the starting point, but we didn't challenge people, right? So we knew we wanted to say, you can go to the next level of whatever it is. You can actually have a big dream and you can bring it to life through sport. So we wanted to have challenges. We wanted to wrap it in fun. But when you looked at the space, so wait a minute, what's real life with our friends and our workmates? They're not all Ironman or color run in leaving it at that, right? Why don't we have a weekend where we put all the challenge type events together, from a color run style to, an endurance event like the Hackney Half. And the idea, inspired by the music, make it a thing everyone, oh yeah, let's do this. And the let's can be your buddies and your mates and your family, and let's do this. And everyone can be an active participant instead of somebody is the endurance athlete and everybody else is there to cheer alone. So that's the initial idea. And I think if you look at other events, they're sort of on the fun or the extreme side of it. There's not so much bringing it together. So I think it's a fun opportunity. And I think people are ready I think runners are ready to do more core work. And I think there's way more ways into fitness and sport today, especially out of university, than we had. And so I think there's actually people who are really fit now, but they don't see themselves as runners. So they may evolve to runners. And I think the runners, I haven't run 4 weeks. First time in many years I'm hurt. And I should have been doing even more core. So I think the runners need that balance too. So.
And Hackney, it's 30th of April. So
30 days.
30 days, not far along at all. And you've got, as well as the half marathon, which is obviously well established now, you've put on a
5.5K. So the idea there was just, we're going to start small and just have it be, the whole thing is bring a buddy. That's the idea. It's buy one, get one. So it's bring a buddy, get out with your friends. Over time, we'd like to have them on separate days. So even the half marathoner can bring run with their friend or family. But the idea is a great spirit. And you know what? The privilege is, and the excitement is running the streets of Hackney. And so far that's been reserved for the half marathoners. So we want to give a taste of that to people at a shorter distance. And then the village, the Hackney Marshes, which are amazing. We will have all day yoga, high intensity workouts, boot camp style, all free. So it should be a nice first go round of it, with music and food and fun all wrapped around it.
Well, I can't think of a better location than London than Hackney.
So we really had a choice of where do we want to start first, and I just think Hackney says pretty much everything about what the attitude we want to have and approach.
So, and obviously developing on that theory, the some of the plans for the future, if you can tell me? I'm sure some of them are top secret.
So the number one right now is make sure everyone has an amazing experience. I mean, that's, if we walk away, the only goal of the year, the only goal is for every event we put on, if people say, okay, I got to do this and I got to bring my friend next time and I enjoyed it, that's our focus right now. So we'll start with Hackney and then Westminster and the British 10K, and Oxford in October, and then the first US event, San Francisco. And then we're really we have a long run, pun intended, view of this. So at most we'll do 2, maybe 3 more in the US next year, and 1, maybe 2 more in London next year. So that's our plan. And then over time we'll grow in the US, in the UK, and then go from there. I think there's a lot of opportunity globally in a number of cities. And one of the things we're looking at that from an insider view of the industry is I keep looking at where do we partner with other people in the industry already. Because one, we're all fulfilling, to me, our mission is to get people moving and help them over the barriers that stop them. So everyone else is helping in doing that. But also if we can work together with some other running and event companies in other cities, I think that could be a lot of fun too.
Well, it's absolutely fascinating chatting to you. We wish you all the best, and we look forward to seeing you on 30th of April.
We're excited. Hope to see you there.
Thanks very much.
Great.